How I'm building my marketing team at Adapt is different than how I built my marketing team at Original Grain, which is different than how I'm building my marketing team for Shooting Doubles, my side hustle brand. Every single brand has different strengths that they need to play into. They have different weaknesses that they need to try to patch up. So today I'm going to talk about team building, going to go through a couple examples, and hopefully it gets your brain thinking in the right direction of who your next hire should be based on who your brand is, what you need to get where you want to go. So at OG, the watch company, we needed a ton of really, really high quality imagery in order to sell a bunch of watches. And photographing and videographing, video recording, shooting watches is very, very difficult. Getting the lighting right, getting the glare not to be on the face of it, the positioning of the watch, so much goes in to producing one good photograph of a watch. So much so that like our best, cleanest photos of a watch are actually like 30 images stitched together in order to get it right. So we invested a lot in creative. When I first got to OG, we were using a creative agency for everything. And they were doing good work, but they weren't doing enough and they weren't doing it fast enough. So we hired a couple freelancers to see who else might be good at it, found a guy, offered him a full-time job, and he came on board. Now, when he first got there, he was not as good as that creative agency was, but we were willing to invest the time and budget to kind of develop his skill set, and it massively paid off. Within a couple months, he was as good as that creative agency, and then by the end of my tenure there, he, I think, is one of the best watch photographers in the world, hands down. So we invested in creative a ton because that's what our brand needed. We hired him full time. By the time I was done there, we had another full-time shooter. I think we called him his like whatever content assistant or something. But that was a big help. We had a full-time, kind of started as graphic designer and then transitioned into more of a creative director. But again, that's 3 roles right there that were like all about creative, all about making our watches look as good as possible. And that creative team, I still think, is like one of the best creative teams as far as like photography and graphics go. I think they're absolutely best in class. My next hire, I needed help on the marketing execution side, and I did something a little bit controversial. I hired someone that had never worked in ecom before. Their previous roles had all been in social media, so they understood, the digital landscape a little bit, but had never run a Facebook ad, had never sent an email in Klaviyo, had never logged into Shopify. Everyone at OG was very skeptical of why I was hiring him. They all assumed it was a nepotism hire, but I didn't hire for skill set. I hired for attitude and personality and hustle. And within a few months, he was trained up on every single thing I needed him to do. He had his hands on the buttons running our ad account that spent like 15 or 20 million last year. Since I left, I think he's been promoted to director of paid or something. Um, and I think this is something that goes like really under talked about, is like training and developing talent, which I think is such an underrated skill. And to me, like it's where we've gotten the most value from people, because when I first posted this role, I think we called it like ecom marketing manager, which is a broad term of someone who's like, hey, help me with Meta and Shopify and Klaviyo and IntelliGems and PostScript and stuff, when we first hired this role or posted this role, we got a ton of applicants. I think we had like 300 applicants come in who all had very strong opinions about how marketing should be run at a regional grain. A lot of those opinions were bad. A lot of those, suggestions were things we had tried and failed at already. So this was not a role at first where I wanted someone to come in and be strategic. I just needed an executor. So I chose to have someone come in with no experience, no suggestions, no strategic ideas about what we should do, because I wanted to train him up to be, a mini me, essentially. I wanted to teach him. I didn't want him to come in with bad habits or bad ideas of what had worked at other brands. Um, Marketing was going incredibly well at the time we hired him. And I just needed someone to help me execute the playbook that we had built there. So don't sleep on developing talent. Don't sleep on training people. And then the lesson I learned on the creative side is like, don't be afraid to overinvest, like in your fastball, in your best thing, which for us was, static imagery and graphics of our watches. So let's invest a lot in that, because it pays us back, tenfold. At Adapt, at a supplements brand, it's a little bit different. We're not so heavy on creative. People are not buying our products because of how pretty we can make them look. We still need creative, but we don't need, the crazy high quality photography that we needed at OG. So the way I'm building the team is a little bit different. First and foremost, we have a director of retention. And being a supplements brand, like, that's so important for us. Like, we are gonna live and die by how strong our returning customer revenue is, and squeezing every ounce we can out of our email and SMS lists, out of our past customers, is the way that this business is going to win. So I want someone solely focused on that, owning that, and making sure that number is growing. Then, similar to the last role I hired at OG, I've got a not a right hand man, a right hand gal here at OG. I think we called her growth marketer or something, coordinator, associate manager or something. And she is helping me with execution on Shopify, Meta, and IntelliGems. We test a lot of new LPs. We test a lot of new content on site. So it's really, where we need to spend a lot of time. Next up, we have a creative strategist who directs a team of overseas but full-time creators. This is relatively new for us, but we got some overseas editors and designers who are solid. And then we have a creative strategist in-house who's been with the brand since inception, and she is making sure that our best performing messaging and angles and offers are getting into our ad creative every single week. So again, when you think about team building, you need to think about what the brand needs right now to survive, and then what the brand needs to get to where you want to go next. What does the brand need to hit your goals over the next 12 months? Depending on your category, depending on your industry, depending on what your internal team's already good at, that's going to be a different thing for everyone. So I can't sit here and tell you that, a head of creative is the next best hire for everyone. It so depends on, the head of marketing or the CMO's skill set, the vision for the brand, current performance, what's working, what's not. And you need to kind of fill the gaps in with hires that you think are going to make a big impact in the coming months. All right, I got a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to go to Twitter to see what some of these questions are. Let's see. First up, Connor Rolane. What's up, Connor? How are you, dude? Connor, head of growth for Hexclad, asks, I'm curious how you implement systems of governance with your team without spending hours in one-on-ones. Great question, Connor. Connor's a super smart dude. I've learned a lot from him. And I also think he's a great manager. We've spent a lot of time talking about managing teams, especially at a young age. I think we're both 30. So managing people older than us can be, dicey sometimes. But to answer your question, Connor, we run everything on EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, which has some good frameworks for giving my team big priorities, which are called rocks. And then we have weekly scorecard metrics that we look at every single Monday. And for me, like we've bent the EOS framework a little bit. Rocks are supposed to be 90 days. There's times right now where I'm giving my team like 3-week rocks, where I'm like, hey, for the next month, I want you to focus on this one thing, because that's a priority. I'm putting, 1 or 2 new metrics on your scorecard that we're going to look at weekly that are tied to that rock. And I want to make sure those numbers are improving. I usually give kind of 2 types of scorecard metrics. One is based on is based on something that they can control. And then one is based on, the ideal outcome of that thing. So, if I have a short-term priority of like, I want to increase new customer AOV on a certain product funnel that we have, I create a 4-week rock with that task. And the 2 scorecard metrics are like number of upsell and offer tests launched. I think we should be launching 1 or 2 new tests per week. So let's make sure we're doing that. My team is 100% responsible for that. If they're not doing that, I'm going to be pissed. Now, the outcome I want to see is obviously an increased AOV. But if we miss that, as long as we did the right inputs, I can't get too mad at the team for that. Sometimes you do everything right and it doesn't work, and it's going to take an extra round or 2 of testing. It might take some better content. So that's kind of how I hold the team accountable, hold them like rock solid accountable to what they can control, their actions, their inputs. We obviously believe those will lead to the ideal outcomes, but when we miss them, we talk about why. We talk about what we can try again to get that outcome to improve. But so far, it's going pretty well. And yeah, as far as like not spending hours in meetings with them, we have a whole marketing team call on Monday, and then I do all my one-on-ones with them on Tuesday. So it's a max of 2 hours a week per employee. And then they get to work for the rest of the week. All right, next question here. Do you hire vegans? No, I don't think I'm legally allowed to discriminate on that. But I also think in the last job posting we put up, we said in there, like, we will eat a copious amount of steak during quarterly on-site meetings. So be ready for that. Question from Leandro. What do you look for when hiring creative talent? How do you retain talent? How do you teach taste? I have thousands more questions. All right. When I look for hiring creative talent, one, like, talent is first and foremost. I firmly believe it's a skill. Teaching someone to be more creative, I think, is a losing battle. When I talk about, the photographer at OG we hired who wasn't awesome at the beginning, it wasn't due to a lack of talent. It was really due to like a lack of equipment and experience with it. But we could see from early on, like, he was creative, he was passionate, which I think is a really big thing. You do not want burnt out creatives working on the team. So you got to make sure they're excited about the work they're going to do. And then I think like the best thing I've learned from creatives or from managing creatives is give them like relentless feedback, good and bad. If you want them to execute your vision, then you need to tell them every single nitty gritty detail of where their creative either is or is not hitting that vision to a T. Do that, pay them well, give them some creative freedom when you can afford to. Give them deadlines, because creatives do not like working in an organization with deadlines and rules. So you got to be on top of them sometimes. But that's where I found some of my best success hiring and managing creatives. Next question. Aiden asks how to structure aligned incentives throughout the entire team, especially editors and designers. First and foremost, I think you got to understand which of your employees want performance incentives. because it's not everyone. I've had employees tell me that, like, hey, I just want to come in, make a salary, do good work, and leave. And for certain roles, that's fine. For roles that are more tied to performance, I like doing performance incentives as much as I can. That's usually some kind of percentage or tiered bonus on contribution margin or net income. As far as designers and editors go, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of internal creatives that have like huge performance bonuses. That could be biased though, because I just like paying people well. I don't want anyone on my team to make less than 100K. So my team has typically been more weighted towards salary and a little bit less on the bonus side, just because I like to pay as high as possible salaries to people as possible. All right, last question. Sam asks, at what point does it make sense to move from agency to in-house? I actually created like a whole flow chart for this. This could probably be a whole other podcast episode, but I want to pull this up because it's a question I get a lot. When should you hire in-house? When should you hire an agency? When you should hire a freelancer? I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I have a very, very strong preference towards in-house teams because I think most often any experience or expertise an in-house employee might be missing when they first start the job compared to the best agency out there. I think because they're spending 40 hours a week on the brand, within 6 months they're going to be so much more valuable to you than the agencies are. And I've seen that time and time again in my career. I've had like 3 real jobs in e-com over the last 10 years, and every single one, the assignment was the same: come into a brand, build an in-house marketing team, reduce our reliance on external resources, and save us money, make us more money. So far, I think I'm 3 for 3 with that. So yeah, let's walk through this flowchart here. First thing I ask is the thing, whatever the thing is, whether you're exploring, you need a resource to do email or ads management or creative, whatever that thing is it mission critical that the business is great at that thing? That is question number 1. If the answer is no, ask yourself, is the price to value ratio of an in-house employee better than an agency? If yes, and you have the bandwidth to take it on internally, then just do it internally. If no, or if the price to value ratio is better on the agency side, ask yourself if you need a long-term solution to this. And I define that as like longer than 18 months. And again, I make this distinction because agencies, in my mind, are the best for getting something done quickly and like most of the way right. Like if you are a new brand and you don't have time to worry about email right now, and you're just like, hey, I just need someone to come in, set up basic flows and get me a couple campaign templates that work, an agency can be great for that. But if this is something that you're going to need long term, then like I talked about earlier, I think the skill gap is going to close really quickly from someone working on your brand full time. The other thing I like with in-house employees is like they can be cross-functional. If you have an email agency, they're not doing anything else for you besides creating and sending emails. If you have an employee who does that, and then you find out they're a really good copywriter, they're gonna be like, hey, let's figure out a way to get you to write ads and landing page copy, and maybe you learn how to test that copy through IntelliGems. They can become a lot more valuable to you because of the extra time in place here. So let's go to the other side of the tree. If the tactic that you are trying to hire for is mission critical, that the business is great at, and the manager is capable of teaching someone or managing someone to be great at it, then you should absolutely hire in-house. The manager, whoever is going to be, the direct report of this new hire, could be the CMO, VP of marketing. If the CMO knows how that tactic should be run, is somewhat of an expert at it, then you should hire in-house no matter what. And this kind of goes back to that hire I made at OG of the role with no experience at all. Is like, I knew everything I was going to ask him to do inside and out because I'd been doing it for the last 2 years. So like, I was in it. I knew what worked best for this brand. So I didn't need someone with a ton of experience, which saved us a bunch of money. And he was super valuable to us. When the manager is not capable of, is not equipped to be the expert at it, then I ask myself, are there consultants or courses that you could take to kind of bridge that gap in expertise? I did this early on in my career when I was at Dugout Mugs. I was a CMO at 24, had no clue what I was doing. We wanted to bring email in-house. I was not confident enough in it to say yes, I can just hire someone and manage it. I got Chase Diamond's email course, and it was super informative. Shout out Chase. And super helpful. I took that, I hired someone, I gave that course to them, and I was like, hey, we are going to treat this course like our Bible. We're going to do what it says. When we are confused, we are going to DM Chase on Twitter and try to, get an answer out of them. But that was super helpful. So if there's resources out there for the manager to get better at it and for the new employee to get better at it, then yes, hire in-house. If there's not those resources out there, then I ask myself, will the 40 hours a week experience on the job unlock enough learnings to offset that lack of expertise? Again, I think people underestimate this. I think I can take a really inexperienced marketer and make them much more valuable to a brand, after 6 months of 40 hours a week, rather than the agency who has way more experience, but it's not always relevant to your brand. They're not looking at just your data every single week. You might have some employee turnover there. You might get a different rep 1 month. So if the experience will make up for that lack of expertise, hire in-house. If not, then you got to ask yourself, are there reputable resources out there who offer the service at a fair price? And let me be clear, a percentage of spend is not a fair price, ever. So if there are reputable agencies out there who offer the service at a fair price, then yes, you can hire externally, but then I would tell you to make a plan to bring it in-house within 24 months, because anything that is mission critical that your business is great at should be under your roof. Firmly believe that. If there's not people out there who offer the service for a fair price, hire in-house and figure it out. I think the figure it out skill is not talked about enough at all. We look at some, people in the industry like they are experts, but to give you the classic high school football coach example, they put their pants on one leg at a time, like the rest of you. There's nothing special about what we do. Everyone who has made a lot of money in marketing has been in the game for a while and has tried a lot of things and has had a good system for figuring out what's working and understanding why it's working. That's it. So I think the figure it out talent is not talked about enough. So that's my flow chart of when you should hire in-house or agencies. In-house dominates the field. There are some cases where you should hire externally. I hired an agency this quarter or last quarter because it met the criteria of this flow chart. I also got rid of 3 agencies that did not meet the criteria of this flow chart. So that's what I think. Agency guys are not going to like this. Sorry about it. I don't make my podcast for you. All right. 25 minutes on the main topic today, but we got 3 more segments to go. Oh, and actually, let me bring that screen back because we are going right into field tested. This is the segment brought to you by IntelliGems every week, where I show you the real results of a split test that we ran on site and talk our way through it. This one was a format change on our homepage. And as you can see, had no effect on revenue or profit per visitor, slight win on conversion rate, but AOV was down. And I wanted to bring this up because people, when they talk to me about CRO, they immediately want to test format and structure. They want to test a new layout. And I rarely see it be as impactful as testing content. So this new homepage format was without a doubt prettier, without a doubt looked much better. To us marketers, it makes more sense for people to navigate on. But at best, produced a 3% increase in conversion rate, where usually every headline test we run is at least a 10% swing. So test content way more often than you are testing site structure. That is the lesson from field tested today. Going on to tweet of the week. This one, shout out to Sarah Levinger. This is the tweet of the week because the Brain Driven podcast is back. If you guys don't know, me and Sarah had run a podcast for like the last 2 years called Brain Driven Brands, where we deep dive on consumer psychology and creative strategy, a whole bunch. It's been a great podcast. We took the last 3 months off because we've been busy and just needed a break. But we are back. The first episode is live. So go follow Sarah and listen to the Brain Driven Brands podcast anywhere you get your pods. Last segment this week is Marketers Anonymous. And the question is, if you had to pick one KPI to run the business on for a month, what would it be? I went back and forth on this, but I think I've got my answer and I'm ready to defend it. I think the one KPI that I would run the business on for a month, if I couldn't look at anything else, was just number of customers acquired. That's it. You know, I have a 9 or a 10 word marketing strategy that I try to use to simplify every decision that I make. It is acquire as many high value customers as you can afford. That's my 10 word marketing strategy. I want to acquire as many high value customers as we can afford. So to distill that down even further, I would want to run the business on total new customers acquired. That is, I think, the best indication of future performance and the best indication of how everything is working today. So that's what I'll do. Thanks so much for listening to Tactical and Practical. This was a long one today, but I think super valuable. I already know there's going to be a lot of dumb arguments when I tweet out that agency or in-house flow chart on Twitter. I'm probably going to post that and then go golf and ignore the replies. So I'll see you over in the Twitter land. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week.